that are going to make an impact. And to make an impact, you have to be online. So to be online, podcasting is the best option because podcasting is growing so rapidly. But here's the one thing you have to be thinking about. You got to podcast on purpose. There's plenty of people start podcasting with no plan and they quit. But if you have a purpose, and we're going to share the purpose with you today, because there's three things that are part of our community. We use podcasting to connect with people, to invite people, and we just don't invite our friends, although it's not a bad thing, but if you're on purpose, you invite your key strategic partners. And that's a show for another day, but your key strategic partners are people that will feed you business. And if you invite those kind of people, and we'll use Jerry as an example, being a Medicare advisor / educator, there are people that when they hit 62, they have to start thinking. They have to start thinking about what are they going to do when they hit 65? Because anything to do with the government is not simple. It's never simple. It's complicated. They make simple things complicated instead of the other way around. So you need a professional like Jerry to guide you through the process. Now, how is he going to guide you through? Because he's been doing it for well over 8 years, serving people. And he serves them by listening, caring, and being knowledgeable. Now, his course that's coming out will help people that, let's just say you're a property and casualty insurance company. You want the best for your clients. When they hit 62, they have to start thinking about 65, because when they hit 65, there's a lot of decisions that need to be made. And if you're not making the right decisions, then it could cost you, because there's timetables on your journey into Medicare. And that journey is, if you miss it, it's not like you can go back and rewind and reset. You're done. You have to do something else. So you want a professional to guide you through the process. So when it comes to key strategic partner, Jerry invites on his podcast, Medicare Made Easy, key strategic partners like a property and casualty company. And why do they invite and recommend people to Jerry? Because they want to take care of their clients. Because if their clients are coming back to you and saying, hey, Lucas, why didn't you tell me that all these things were going to happen at age 65? Now you're going to be caught not servicing your clients. So you want to give them the knowledge to start thinking about it and recommend Jerry, who has a course that they can take to get them ready for 65. So podcasting with a purpose is built around key strategic partners, creating digital content, because when I meet, let's say I run into Eric, and I did at a football fantasy show. We started talking. Next thing, he's on my podcast. I get to learn. I get to understand. I get to hear his journey, which is an incredible one, because a lot of people start out wanting to be a professional. Most drop off because it's hard work, really hard work. And you got to be focused and be ready for the challenges. So when Eric came on my podcast, I got to learn a lot more about him. Now, every time we did a podcast, it's out in the marketplace. So now if you search Eric Watson, you're going to see some of his podcasts. Now, today, it's a digital footprint. So you want to have as much about your name as you possibly can. So he's creating digital assets, which when you search, if he dominates the first page of Google, what does a prospect going to say, man, he's good. I got to do business with him, because they see your content out there, not just your website, but they see your story. They see your podcast out there. So when we create the podcast, it's to create a digital asset, put you out there, because AI is changing everything. In the next couple of years, this economy is going to be turned upside down. And a lot of people, you can only project, we don't know for sure, but they say 5 jobs are going to be consolidated into one. You want to be that one job. You want to be so valuable they can't do without you. And if you're not, you'll be one of the 4. So by putting that digital asset now, by planning, by having a plan to be able to be out there, then you're going to be in a better position. So we podcast, we create digital assets, and then we get into coaching. Now, a lot of people say, I had a friend, he's been on my podcast, and I said, would you like to do a strategy session? And he said, Pete, I'm not interested in coaching. I said, well, why? He said, have you seen my resume? I said, yeah, it's impressive. But have you seen Michael Jordan? And he said, what do you mean? I said, when Michael Jordan came to the Bulls, he was a great scorer. A great scorer didn't win championships until a coach, Phil Jackson, came into his life. Now, by taking a talented person, it's kind of like we're in football season right now. So I'm going to give you a football analogy, okay? Eric, I will get off sports. We have a golfer in the crowd, and we have a professional basketball player in the crowd. So I'm going to use football because we don't have a football player here. But let's say you can get in football, you can run down the field to the 20-yard line. Now, what's the 20-yard line? Does anybody have an idea? What do they call the 20-yard line? Red zone. Okay, great. That red zone, if you can't score and get in the end zone, you can't celebrate. Do you know anybody that kicks a field goal and goes crazy? No, because they had to settle for a field goal. They had to settle. They didn't get it into the end zone. So with coaching, when I got my first high performance coach, I could get it to the 20-yard line, but I was not getting it in the end zone. That's where you celebrate victory. That's where a coach can get you in the end zone. So when you're looking at your business, whether it's a mentor or a coach, that is getting you from the red zone to the end zone. And the end zone is where you want to be, because nobody settles. When you look at a game, they always say, okay, they couldn't get it in the end zone, they're going to settle for a field goal. And that's the same as life. If you want to settle getting to the 20-yard line, then do it by yourself. If you want to get in the end zone, get somebody to help you, a coach, a mentor. And then the last thing is live events. Why do we do live events? Oh, I'm over my time. Okay. Pretty quickly. We do it because speaking to crowds, speaking to people, one-on-many is better than one-on-one. So the more you're speaking, the more people know you as a speaker, the more you get invited to service clubs, to associations, to organizations that want good speakers. So we capture your content and we put it out there to market you. And just like today, Jerry didn't know Eric. Now Jerry knows Eric. So you're introducing yourself to people in an environment of learning, of growing. So 1, podcast with purpose. 2, get a coach, get in the end zone. Don't live in the red zone. Nobody likes living in the red zone. It would be kind of like, let me see if I could do a basketball term. It would be kind of like scoring without scoring to win. Like if Eric scored 50 points and the team lost, hey, good individual performance, scored 50 points, but the team lost. And the coach is getting everybody involved, feeding Eric the ball when he's open, getting the whole team to play defense, whatever it is, the coach is going to mold that together. Now, our next speaker is going to be a gentleman. I'm going to introduce him to you in the crowd. I had a chance to meet Lucas about 1.5 years ago. Our friend Rand Everhart said, you got to meet this guy. He is impressive. I said, what? At 23? How do you know that? And he said, just take my word for it. So anyway, I met him. And when I got to know him, I agreed with Rand. Because when I was in my 20s, I'm not going to steal his thunder because I'm not going to tell you the 3 things I had 3 things I focused on: partying, drugs, and women. And so that's not a recipe. That doesn't work. That just gets you in trouble. So then when I got out of my stupid stage, I started to maybe get a little bit more serious. But Lucas, at age, let's see, you're 24 now? Okay. So I knew him 1.5 years ago or something, about 1 year ago. So I was thinking, if I had his mindset at that age, I'd be president of the United States. No, I wouldn't want to be that. I'd be a lot further along, because having that early in your career is a big advantage. So we've done a bunch of podcasts. Lucas came over here from Barcelona, Spain, didn't know how to speak the language, didn't know a person to play on a golf scholarship. So you're playing in the most impressive competitive sport, maybe besides basketball, that you can play in, because it's an individual sport. And he has to learn the language. He has to figure it out. I mean, you come over here working that hard, but it's not over once you come over here. You got to figure it out. So he goes to West Georgia on a scholarship, transfers to Kennesaw State, gets his master's in media and communication. Holy mackerel. If you're selling stock in yourself, I'm buying it. I'm buying it for sure, because that's a path for greatness. And so without further ado, I want to bring on, don't try to play him in golf because you're going to lose. I want to bring on Lucas Mota to share his 3 principles with you.
Well, thank you, Pete. Thank you for having me out here. Thank you for having me in all the podcasts and keep doing things along with you. It's an honor. It's definitely, I see your purpose, I see your vision, and that helps me also every day. But when I first came to the US, I didn't know who I want to become or what do I wanted to become. Uh, I didn't know if I was going to get a degree in finance. I didn't know if I wanted to be a professional golfer. I didn't know any of that. But I had one thing pretty clear, and is that I wanted to be a better person. So to do so, I started to do something, which is every night I would have a little sticker next to my nightstand with 3 words of the person that I want to be. Those 3 words at the beginning were horrible because I had no idea of what those things were going to be, or they were pretty superficial. So at the beginning, maybe was being rich or having a girlfriend or whatever other words you might think of that they don't bring any value to you as a person. As the years go by, I start to get better at that. And those words keep changing. Some of them because I felt that I accomplished and I became those words. And some of them because they weren't the right words. So as of today, those ones on the screen are my 3 words. And the first one is hard work. The only reason I had that, it's because my dad once told me average work leads to average results. And that was enough for me to kick in. So I was like, I definitely should have that in there. In addition, I wanted to stay in the US, which makes it even harder. So I had to have it. Second one was discipline. Discipline, it's perhaps the hardest word that I've ever had to deal with. Because for some reason, it's very easy to get addicted to the bad things, but it's very hard to get addicted to the good things. And doing the things over and over without knowing if might happen or might not happen, it's tough. So it's still there because for me, it's still a battle. And it's still something that I have to fight every day. And it's still something that I fall into, that I'm not disciplined enough. The last one is honesty. Um, Before honesty, I had nice person. And nice person might seem another great word, but I've realized that you can't be a nice person if you are not honest with yourself first. I've realized that I wasn't honest enough with myself, and that going forward, I wanted to make sure that honesty was implemented deeper in my life. So far, I'm a work in progress. Like I like to say, I'm a constant learner. And hopefully, I don't know when it will be, but those three words eventually might turn into something else. And that nightstand table sticker will become something else. So thank you.
Can you stay for just a second while I ask you a couple questions?
Sure.
So, when you came to the US not knowing a person, what was your mindset? Because we all get uncomfortable in situations. How did you handle being that uncomfortable?
Well, it's quite funny because I've always been extremely introverted and never had many friends. So definitely coming here and having to open myself to others and meet them, it was definitely hard. But I was very fortunate that the first day I fly into West Georgia, I go to the orientation day, and the guy seated next to me, it's from Barcelona as well, in the middle of Carrollton, Georgia. So he helped me a lot. He was extroverted, or he is extroverted. And together we accomplished great things, and we managed to get along pretty well and to meet others. So definitely that helped me. Then when I came to Kennesaw, 3 years later, it was just me, myself, and I. But fortunately enough, 3 years into the US, I already knew some people. I was more extroverted. I was not that scared of talking to people, and it was a little easier. In addition, I've always been with my team, so having a golf team that supports you and that helps you to introduce to everybody definitely helps.
It's awesome. I have one more question. It came to my attention a couple years ago. When you are speaking a second language, you have to start thinking in a second language. How long did it take you, for the people out there that are learning a different language, how did you navigate thinking? Because when we went to Rotary, and Jerry's in the audience, he's a Rotarian too, I was amazed at your humor. And you have to be very confident about who you are to do that. And you're in your second, so you're speaking English and your primary language is Spanish. So how long did it take you to make that adjustment, and what was it like?
Well, first of all, that's a never-ending battle. There will be times that me talking, I have to change the word that I want to say because I don't know the right word in English, and I know the word in Spanish. So that's a never-ending battle. The good thing that I have is that all my personality and my growth has been developed in English, not in Spanish. So when it comes to humor, when it comes to talking to people, negotiations, whatever, even women, all my progress has been done in English. So I struggle more in Spanish than I do in English.
Interesting. I love that.
But it's a never-ending battle. I will always mix some words. I will always pronounce something wrong, or I will never, as of right now, I will never be able to express precisely what I want to say because some words I'm missing or I'm not that fast to pull out those words. And those people who know Spanish and English doesn't help me because I'm able to say those words in Spanish and mix them in between English words, and that's completely fine. And that obviously doesn't help because then it doesn't help me to keep improving my English.
That is awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. Let's give it up for Lucas Mota. Thank you, Lucas. Appreciate it. Our next guest is a person I met about maybe a year ago or less. But when I first met him, we had the incredible conversation because when people have that way of connecting, you walk away and you go, man, that was a fun conversation. That was a learning conversation. And I was amazed at how he described how he connected with his clients, because I'm a senior citizen, so is he. When you get a little older, you reflect more than you would when you're younger. And as seniors, having lived in a facility, I saw the reflection of people later in life, like they should have done this or they talk about this. But it was so neat to see how Jerry fell in love with the senior community. A career CPA, always good in the financial end, but connecting emotionally with seniors was a cool thing. And then when I learned, because we've had several conversations on this, how he travels with him and his wife. He travels differently than I've ever heard. He travels, and I'm not going to tell his words, but he travels with a purpose. And I think in today's, I see it, some of my friends, I don't want to travel. I don't want to go through TSA. I don't want to have to go figure it all out. But what Jerry's going to share with you today is how his mindset will create a completely different thought of how you're going to enjoy lifestyle and traveling. And he's going to share with you today. So Jerry, could you please come up and share with our audience? We just increased it by 30%. Thank you, Lindsay.
Well, thank you, Pete. So the theme of my message, even though I'm a Medicare agent today, is the idea of chasing history. A little bit of background. I grew up in a immigrant community in Eastern Ohio where everybody's father or grandfather came from Eastern Europe or Italy, and they all worked in the coal mines and the steel mills. It was a very tough existence. But because of that, I got to know the European culture, and I got to really appreciate it. We're always having some kind of celebration at the Polish Hall, or on Sundays we would go down to the local tavern, and the Italians would be playing bocce ball, and I just got really interested in that. And so I felt at home with the European culture. But on top of that, the town I lived in of Lansing, Ohio, was on Route 40, which was the first national highway going across the United States. And there'd be people coming from the East Coast heading out to California. And on weekends in the summertime, I would get paid for cleaning their windshields when they came in for gasoline. And they're always excited about going to California. They're always excited about going to the Rocky Mountains. And that interest just flowed into me. And so I really developed a great sense of travel and to seeing the world. So fast forward, when I'm in college, going to school at George Washington University in Washington, D.C., I worked as a ramp serviceman for United Airlines. So every time I got an opportunity for a few days off, away I would go to California or to the Rocky Mountains or to Boston, just enjoying travel. And then on top of that, I belonged to the National Guard. And our training was in Germany. So all of a sudden now I'm in Germany and I'm in Europe, seeing Europe. And so I really developed this great desire for travel. And I was traveling so much that after a while, seeing the same site became less exciting, less boring, or more boring, less exciting. And one day I started thinking about the history of where I was going to go, and it changed everything. So I developed this idea of I want to really chase history. So I'm going to give you some examples of my chasing of history. So, for example, the last time we were in Rome, gee whiz, going to the Colosseum, it's like going to a playoff game with the Braves where there's just people everywhere. It just takes away from the beauty of the Colosseum. You can't get near the Trevi Fountain because there are just so many people crowded there. It's just awful. To get to the Pantheon, now you have to have a reservation. So what we did is we went to the Milvian Bridge. Who ever heard of the Milvian Bridge in Rome? Well, the Milvian Bridge was a place where a battle took place between Constantine and who controlled the Eastern European Empire and the guy who controlled the Western European Empire called Maxentine. Maxentine was Constantine's brother-in-law. And they had this gigantic battle right there at the Milvian Bridge. There was nobody there at the Milvian Bridge except my wife and I. But the idea of this battle taking place, and when Constantine won, he was inspired by a cross that he had seen in the sky, and he became a Christian. He legitimized Christianity. So when he legitimized Christianity, that set the world to develop the Western civilization. So here at this bridge in Rome, where no one ever goes, was the beginning of the Western civilization. So that's the kind of thing that I enjoy. So coming up here, for example, in Christmas, I'm going to be in Florence. Consuela may be there. And we're going to a church on Christmas Day where the great artist Botticelli is buried. And if you've ever been to the churches in Europe, they're just fantastic. And here's a church where one of the greatest artists that ever lived is buried, along with the person who he admired the most and was the focus of his paintings. So it's just the idea of chasing the history makes Florence a much better place. Another example of our chasing the history is twice I've taken the Trans-Siberian Railway that goes from Beijing to Moscow, and it goes through Mongolia, up into Siberia, and across Russia. But when you go through a place like Mongolia, and you understand the history of Mongolia, at one time Mongolia had conquered about half of the world, and these guys who knew how to ride horses and shoot bow and arrows killed about 10% of the world population in all of their conquests. But just going through Mongolia and seeing nothing there and trying to understand where these Mongolians came from is just mind-numbing. And but before we went on the trip, then we also went to the Great Wall of China. 5,000 miles of wall built just to protect themselves from the Mongols. So, and I learned there that almost 60,000 people died building that wall, and they buried them inside the wall. So I thought that was kind of cool. But and then I also started to chase some of my family history. So I went to Salerno in Italy, where my uncle was on the landing crew that went into Salerno at the beginning when the Americans started going into Europe for the first time. And then I went to Hungary, where my grandparents were married. Went to the church where they were married. Had a great time with the Hungarians there. And then I went into Poland to find where my grandfather was born. I had a Polish grandfather who was a violinist in a very famous Polish orchestra. He was drafted by the Prussian army, which was really a brutal place to be. And he deserted and he walked across Europe and found his way to the United States and eventually became my grandfather. When I was in Poland, we decided to visit Krakow, where John Paul II preached and went to school. We loved John Paul II. I consider him to be one of the greatest popes ever. But in Poland, the dark side of history came out. We took a short tour of Auschwitz. It was a moment that I cannot forget, the horror that went on inside of Auschwitz. It was just a short tour. When we came back home, I became obsessed with evil, and I was trying to understand what evil was about. And so we decided to go back to Krakow, to go back to Auschwitz, spend the entire day there, and just spending time in the concentration camps. And when you go into a warehouse there and you see toddler shoes and baby shoes that were taken off of children who were murdered there, you just can't comprehend the evil that existed in the world. And I went one step further trying to understand evil. And that was, we went to a city in Ukraine called Lviv, which at the time was part of Poland. There was a book written called The Girl in the Green Sweater. And it's a story of this Jewish family who for a year and a half had to live in a sewer in order to survive being persecuted by the Nazis. They lived down there. Someone had a baby down there. But every day they lived in these sewers and they had to fight all the things that go on inside of a sewer. And at that point, I realized I would never, ever understand evil. And I gave up on it. And that was the end of my dark side of chasing history. But I have some great plans coming up here. Hopefully this year, we're going to be taking my family to Egypt and following all the history that goes on there. But the greatest adventure I would love to do in chasing history is called the Silk Road. This was a road developed originally by Marco Polo to bring silk from China back to Europe. And I would love to do that. The problem is that to follow the Silk Road, you start out in China, and you go through Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, and those places, and then it goes into Iran and Iraq, which you can't do. So you'd have to go up to Moscow to get out. But chasing history on the Silk Road is my next big prize. And hopefully in my lifetime, I would be able to do that. But chasing history has really changed the way I look at adventure and travel. It just made my wife and I's life so much richer to understand the history behind the places that we go. So I would encourage you to look at the idea of chasing history rather than just visiting normal places. So that's my story.
I love it. I love it. Every time we have a conversation about lifestyle and chasing history, I learn something, because I think for me, I was never a history buff because I never connected emotionally with parts of history. It was just a textbook. And so I love how you are connecting emotionally with it. You're learning, and to chase it, I've told at least 20 of my friends about it, and I got them to think whether they make that transition. Who knows? We all have choices. But I love that you have put that in three main things that really bring history alive. So I want to thank you, Jerry, for sharing that with us today. Thank you. Thank you. And also, I want to remind people now, if he's not chasing history, he's taking care of our senior citizens as a Medicare advisor. And his podcast is Medicare Made Easy. Now, that sounds like that's no way we can make Medicare made easy, but there's a way when you have a professional. So I want you to tune in, find Jerry online, find his podcast. You can also go to our website, his link's on there, so you can learn more about and help your people out there. Because my sister just called me and they're knocking on the door, and I encouraged her to find a professional. Now, I said, if you can't find a professional, I have one in my town, but find a professional. Don't do it on your own. So our next guest, this one's a cool one. Well, there's two cool ones coming, but this one. So I met this gentleman. I think I'm in the right sequence. No, who do we have after Jerry? I want to make sure. Oh, okay. We're going to shift gears here because I got it out of sequence. This young lady is a rock star in corporate America. I tell you what, we all know, and we have it in our Rotary Club. There was a thing about when Rotary first started, it was white guys and it was guys. So, and if you were a woman trying to join a Rotary back 20 years ago, good luck, because you couldn't do it. They had such a closed mind. And so when I met Lindsay, every time I talk to her, I'm amazed at the courage that she has and what she's doing to break the barriers in corporate America. Because you're going to hear from this person, because she is rocking it. Just right now, I won't tell her company because I don't have permission, but she's a vice president in a male-dominated industry. And when you can do that, you have not only courage, but you're going to hear the three things that she has embraced to rise in her career. So, Lindsay, would you please come and share with us a little of your story so we can get encouragement, especially for our young ladies out there that think that they can't make it in a male-dominated industry. So, Lindsay, it's yours.
Just hold it. So I work in commercial insurance, which is not just male-dominated, but brokerage firms are largely classist as well. So many times if you end up being a commercial insurance broker, it's because you were raised with a certain amount of money and a certain pedigree and a certain family Rolodex of people that you can call and prospect. And coming both as a woman and from just very middle class, my mom was a teacher and my dad was a car salesman, there's a perceived almost immediate ceiling as to where you're going to go and how far you can go. And how much your voice will be valued and how much it'll matter. All of those parameters or hindrances or whatever you want to call them were both out loud and silently communicated to me early on in my sort of foray into commercial insurance. But I wanted to do it anyway because I thought commercial insurance was fascinating. There's emerging exposures and new insurance products, and it's totally a learnable job, like on the job. It didn't matter if you don't have the appropriate degree, whatever else. If someone gives you the opportunity, there's a lot to learn. There's a lot to be done. So these points that, these 3 bullet points that Pete wanted me to come up with, I don't love the brevity and the simplicity of be assertive, because I feel like women tell each other that all the time. Oh, just be assertive. But what I really mean by that is be thoughtful and be firm in the questions that you're asking in the points that you think that need to be made that aren't being made by someone else in the room, and then be bold enough to say them out loud in a professional and contributory way, not just, I'm going to be the loudest person in the room, but this point is out there. Maybe it's the elephant in the room that needs to be said. Maybe it's the concept that needs to be shared, or the question that needs to be asked, or the pain point that needs to be identified with the customer. But there's something that's not being said or being asked, so be bold enough to say it. Also, do so in a way, depending on, like, be aware of your age, your level of experience, and your status, and you may need to, shield isn't the right word, color your statement or your question in a way where you're subtly acknowledging outwardly, I know my place on this team, I know my place in this company and in my career, and I am, for the benefit of the team and the customer, I am putting this forward. And if you are working with reasonable individuals who all have a common shared concern for the end customer, the end user, it's usually going to be well received. I would say, especially for young people, if over time, if you're hitting the same wall of not being allowed to speak, not being allowed to share meaningful ideas or contribute or bring up unanswered questions, if you're constantly being stonewalled or silenced, then it's time to start thinking about whether or not that's the environment that's going to serve you and going to grow you. And if it's an environment where the customer or the audience are the shared primary concern of everyone in the room. Let's see, I'm referring to my own points. Be aware, I said a little bit of that before, but I also want to be aware, to me, is be aware of the next meeting that's coming, the next product delivery date, and what needs to be entailed in that product and the quality of the product, and be prepared for that meeting with your team to discuss the product, discuss the delivery. If you are in an industry where, in whatever way, your degree, your gender, your race, your social status don't necessarily roll out the red carpet for you, then you have to be maybe the harder worker in the room, maybe the more prepared person in the room who knows the most immediate subject matter the best. So if that's preparing for a client delivery, you know the client the best, you know the account the best. You've looked for unanswered questions and you're bringing them forward, because people, whoever they are, who have sort of maybe it's an unfair advantage, or they have an unfair ticket to be at the table, they're going to have a tendency to not be as prepared as you, because they don't have to be. But eventually, hard work overshadows. I need to come up with a phrase for this, whatever it is, like the get out of jail free card or the invitation to the table, whatever it is that makes you an automatic acceptance at that table. If that person is lazy, or if that person takes for granted what you are all trying to do or their place there, eventually your hard work will overshadow that. Let's see. That third point, Pete, is well worded. It's not exactly what I wanted to say. At some point in this career endeavor, if you're on the same path, if you're preparing, if you're being assertive and being bold, if you're aware of your surroundings, aware of your end user, at some point you got to forget whatever the perceived hindrance is to your ticket to the table, whether it's your race, whether it's your gender, your socioeconomic demographic, your degree, or even the people that you know. Like, just focus on the thing that you're passionate about, because everyone's going to have, many people, either a real or a perceived hindrance to their moving forward and their being seen as a worthy member of the team. Just put it aside, and as long as you're pursuing your passion and preparing and doing the work, this at some point will sort of fade away. And on occasions it'll pop its head back up, but you remember how prepared you are, how passionate you are. You will become so engrossed in the passion pursuit that this just kind of disintegrates by comparison. And then you can bring others along that you see as talented, passionate, hardworking junior colleagues who also maybe have been told or have learned that they don't have the automatic ticket to the table, because you want those hardworking people on your team. And you may be able to inspire those who do have a ticket to the table, who don't know really what to do because they were just welcomed with open arms and they feel lost when they get to the table. You may learn also how to encourage them and mentor them toward passion and a feeling of engagement and their reason for wanting to be there, and not feeling like, I don't know, I know everybody here, but I just don't belong. As long as you're working hard and you're all rowing in the same direction and contributing to the same goal, you belong. Whether on this team or another team, there's a place for you and you belong, and there's a lot of work to be done. So let's do it. Thank you.
I got to ask you one question, if I can, get you. So there was a company that came after you. You weren't looking for a job, and they pursued you. And I love how you handled the transition or the situation. What would you say to people, mainly ladies, because I think when I see you as an inspiration to inspire, it's like Jim Ryan, when he broke the 4-minute mile, then everybody started breaking it. When people start breaking through, then others say, man, I could do that. So would you just share with our audience, when you were being pursued, you handled it in the most professional way I've ever seen. What would advice you give to a young person out there working hard, and how you handled that situation without going into a lot of details? Just give them a general overview, because there were so many lessons that I learned when I watched you work through that.
I would first say always be open to a conversation, even if you're not looking for a new role or a new company, especially if they're saying something on the onset that triggers something in you that you were looking for. So always have the conversation, and then honor the person on the other end of that transaction, whether it's a recruiter or a hiring manager, through the whole process. And if they're not honoring you for any reason, in this case they were, be more honoring than they are. I remember I was really fired up about this job. They got me fired up with what they said, and through the whole, it was a long process, and I was on board the whole way, and we got to the finish line, and they got weird and wonky, and it kind of fell apart. But the recruiter on the other end of that transaction never fell apart. She was awesome, and I wanted to honor her. So as soon as I knew, nope, I'm going to stay where I am, I like where I am, I called her rather than send her an email, because she had been so much a partner in the process, to say, I know this is probably going to be a surprise and not what you expected, but I wanted to say thank you so much. You have made this process enjoyable. Many times job interviewing processes are really painful, really awkward, really the candidate just sits around and waits and crosses their fingers, and you made it a transparent process. And she was super gracious and thanked me for calling. She goes, I would have expected a text or an email, but now I get to ask you questions and understand better, and I'll be able to help our company do this better the next time. And she said that the door was still open, and to let her know if I decided in the future that I wanted to pursue them again. And my own company was super gracious and had transparent, open it was granted, the other parties did a great job and were so kind to me in that. But if we could do a better job of honoring other people and just treating them like people instead of a recruiter. A recruiter's like almost an inanimate object. She's a person, he's a person. Not everybody's going to honor that, but a lot of people appreciate being treated like human beings.
Awesome. Dang, I love that. That is so good. Thank you, Lindsay. I appreciate you. You know, Lindsay is inspiring, because I have 2 daughters, and you want the daughters to break through, because in corporate America, in generally, there are obstacles, and you don't want to let your gender hold you back. So Lindsay's going to be inspiring through her actions, through her work, through a podcast we have coming up. And she's going to be opening up herself to mentor some of these ladies out there, because you know what? If we don't mentor them, we can't get them to break through whatever obstacles they have. So I want to thank you for doing that, Lindsay. I appreciate that. So, Kevin, who do we have next? I'm not going to try and figure out this. Oh, yes. Okay, this person came the longest to get here, even where she lives. But can you imagine coming from France to come to this event? I mean, nobody, even Barcelona is pretty far away, but Lucas lives here now, so he didn't make the travel. But Glenda, she was in France till probably yesterday. Is that right? Yeah, so here's a person, and let me give her a proper introduction, okay? Because we said, I think the last time, I don't remember the word, but it didn't really speak to who she is. I've known Glenda through LinkedIn for many years. And then when I had her on my podcast, I found out she had created a game that helps make an impact in the nonprofit world. Gamifying learning. I mean, who does this except somebody who wants an impact on the world? Because our nonprofits make an impact in our communities. However, if they're not reaching their full potential through the three things that Glenda's going to share with you, then they're not going to get the most out of their nonprofit. I've had numerous podcasts with Glenda, and I'm amazed at how she delivers value in what she does. She's a person that's making an impact. I see hundreds of thousands of games out there. Can you imagine playing a game and learning and making an impact on your nonprofit? Well, you can. So you have to go to, I'm gonna give you a plug right here. Go to 501cimpact.com and order Glenda's game. But once you hear the person and her podcast and you get to know her, you're going to know where her heart is to make that impact out there in our nonprofits. And we appreciate you putting this game together, because everybody loves games. And if we can learn and grow and be part of that experience, it's a beautiful thing. So I want to thank you. And Glenda, would you please come up and share with our community how they can make a bigger impact in their nonprofit by aligning themselves with you?
Absolutely. Thank you, Pete. Appreciate it very much. Good morning, everyone. Nothing like coming in right on time, right on cue, and being next on stage. So it's exciting to be with you again today. As Pete mentioned, I just flew in from France yesterday as we were moving our daughter there. And so she's going to have the time of her life teaching in France. But I am here with you all today to talk about nonprofit organizations and the power that they have in our community and how it really leads to thriving communities. And we had an opportunity to touch on this last time when we came together. But today, I want to talk about it in a little bit of different context. And it's really about the reciprocal relationship between the community and the organization. We all want thriving communities. And a lot of that depends on the work of the not-for-profit organization. We're looking to each other and we're looking to entities to help us have a productive lifestyle. And that could include for-profit corporations, the government, and individuals. But there's a sector of the community that we refer to as the not-for-profit sector. And they're really there filling in the gap. And they're there to ensure that we have the proper health, the safety, the enjoyment of our public spaces. They have a focus on the environment and the issues and challenges there. The pets in our lives that bring us joy, that bring us therapy, that help us in rehabilitation. They're looking out for our safety in terms of being a watchdog in many places and many venues around many other public servants and entities. But they're also just providing us a way of making a lifestyle, of training us for work. You have workforce development organizations that are creating opportunities for people to have a better lifestyle, to have a better income, to create a better environment for their families and their children. You have religious organizations that are giving you that hope and allowing you to practice your faith and to wake up in the morning and feel good about yourself and to prepare yourself to get out there and face the world. But how are the nonprofits surviving? What's giving them strength? It's us. It's those of us in our community that choose to be a part of that foundation of a not-for-profit. We are helping them to strengthen themselves. So you talk about the power of the nonprofit helping to build a thriving community. But the thriving community is helping the nonprofit to gain the power that it has, that it's able to exhibit. And that's through our time, our talent, and our treasure. The 3 T's, the trinity of T's that we talk about in the not-for-profit space. Bring your time, volunteer, serve on the board of directors, become an employee, or start a nonprofit yourself because you see a need that's still going unmet. Bring your talent. What is it that you do every day that's a skill that allows you to bring that to the organization and help it to propel itself? Maybe you're great in strategic planning. Now you might be great in fundraising and bringing people together. You have an IT background. You have a banking background. You're in the insurance industry. Not-for-profits are businesses, and they need all those services. So your talent is highly valued. And then, of course, your treasure. Can you write a check? Can you make a donation? They need resources and financing as well. And so when you bring that time, talent, and treasure, you're creating power for the organization to be successful in the community. But what I found in the work that I do in helping organizations through consulting, through training, through coaching, is that there's this sense of frustration that exists a lot of times within not-for-profits. And it really emanates from not understanding how to fulfill your roles and responsibilities as either a board member or even an employee sometimes, or as an employee not feeling like your voice has been heard by those in senior management, or that you're looking at the board and you're saying, that board doesn't really reflect our community, but our staff does. How do we get them to where we are? And so there's this whole collaborative effort that's taking place within the organization to get themselves where they need to be. And that thriving community can be a part of that, so that reciprocal relationship continues between the organization being there to serve the people and the people being there to keep the organization, the not-for-profit, going. Now, in a perfect world, the organization would go out of business. If you're a not-for-profit serving people with cancer, you want to find a cure for cancer and put the nonprofit out of business. But until that happens, we want to ensure they're sustainable. And being sustainable means having the resources that it needs, and those come from us. But understanding how you can contribute that and do it effectively is where I come in as a consultant and a trainer and a coach. And one of the most creative ways I do that is through the board game that Pete mentioned, where it allows people to get around a table in a fun environment with a little bit of competition, and in the process of experiencing what it's like to manage and run an organization, either serving on its board or as the chief executive, but you're also learning the consequences of your decisions. What happens when you don't take an action, or you take too long to take an action, or you keep coming to the board meeting every month talking about the same thing over and over and never making a decision. So all of these things come into play while you're playing the game, and you begin to have reflections and insights into behaviors that you're exhibiting as you fulfill your responsibility. And you begin to question, am I really being effective? Am I showing up to the meetings? Am I following through on what I committed to do? Am I making a personal contribution? Is this nonprofit on whose board I sit in the top 3 of where I donate my treasures? Am I giving a financial contribution? And so in the end, we're creating thriving communities through the power of a nonprofit, but it's being reciprocated through the thriving community back to the nonprofit to help stand it up and ensure that it is successful and that it is sustainable for as long as it needs to exist. And along the way, they'll call in some folks from the outside to help them get there through assessments, through training, through consulting, through coaching, and even through gamified methodologies that bring a little fun into the learning. So it's not so much a lecture or feeling insufficient or feeling being made to feel bad, because everything they're doing is helpful, but you want to make sure it's effective and that it's moving the needle, as we like to say, that you're having that impact in the community. You're changing lives. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Pete. Absolutely.
So when you were thinking, you were making an impact on the nonprofits, this is pre-COVID, and you're putting the board game concept together and you get it out there, then COVID hits. That actually threw a lot of people off. How did you handle your great idea, COVID coming alongside you, which wasn't invited, they came by themselves? What can you tell our audience to how you navigated through COVID with your board game?
Thank you for that question, Pete. Yes, it threw us all for a loop. We were all unprepared for it. But fortunately, what I was able to do with the board game was to transition to an online platform. And we were able to retool the game in a way. Initially, it was a PowerPoint, and a lot of the game was made into individual PowerPoint slides, and I did it remotely. And then we were able to enhance that and make it more electronic. And so now I continue to use the electronic version with my clients remotely. And it wasn't until last year, 2023, that I finally came back out with the physical game in person, which was how it was intended, because part of it was helping board members to get to know each other. A lot of times you come to a board and you treat it as just another meeting, and you sit there and you don't get to know the person to your left and your right. And that actually impedes their ability to be effective, because they don't have any concern for the next person beside them. They just look at them as another person that they're sitting beside to make a decision. But when you have a personal relationship with that individual, then you care about letting them down. And so when you play the board game, it creates this sense of community and team building in the midst of learning how to be effective with what you do. So it was really important that we were able to transition to an online version and then come back to the in-person version, which is the most powerful, but we can still use the online version today.
Thank you, thank you. That's a great lesson there, because we're in a digital world. Thank you, Glenda. We appreciate you very much. We're in the digital world, but we can't forget about the physical world. And we need a combination of both to be effective in how we're communicating. I think of, when you shared that, Glenda, I think of, we are conditioned to text and email, and we're conditioned to be busy, but are we emotionally connecting with people? Pick up the phone and call them. A text doesn't have emotion in it. So, don't forget about the emotion in our communication. You're so right. You think that you're on the board with people, but you come in there for 1 hour and then you're out of there, and you don't have that emotional connection with the people sitting beside you until you start playing a game. And that is so good. I love that. So thank you, Glenda, for making an impact in the nonprofit community. Okay, our next guest, I think, Kevin, how are we looking? Okay, we're gonna move on, because we have Rich had something come up. Okay, our next guest, here he is. Okay, so I met Eric, as I told you just a second at the beginning. We were at a football draft. I wasn't even going to go to a football draft because I don't follow football. I haven't had TV for a couple years, so you're not going to be up on the teams if you don't watch the TV. But I said, what the heck? I got to get out of my apartment. So I go there and I meet Eric, and I'm sitting there talking to him, and I'm just like looking at his hand, and I'm seeing these rings. I'm going, holy mackerel, he won the Super Bowl. And I said, what's the significance of these beautiful rings? And he shared with me, the story behind it. And my first impression was, you can't buy these rings at Walmart. You have to earn them. And so as we did many podcasts together, I got to learn the mindset of Eric Watson. I got to learn, how many kids are challenged at a young age, which I think it was 6th grade. An athlete came and spoke to him and said, this ball can take you around the world. Now, only one person literally took that vision. And that's almost to the point, if your vision's not big enough, you're not going to go through the hard work and the discipline and all the things that's needed. But this gentleman went scoring records like crazy in college, played professionally and I know, let me think, Brazil and Romania, right? So he played in 2 different cultures, different situations, always having to handle adversity, leaning into being uncomfortable. But he made it from that 6th grade challenge from that professional athlete. He went out and made it to the professional ranks. I don't know the odds, but I'll tell you this, it's 1 in a million, because you just don't, all the kids that start playing a sport to make it to the professional ranks, it's just a chosen few. So Eric, would you please come up and share your story and because he's now mentoring kids and he's out there pouring back into the community, because if they see that somebody can do it, then it's possible. And he did it, and it is possible. So Eric, would you please come up here and share with us your journey and the 3 lessons that you can share with our community?
Thank you, Pete, for the introductions. You always do such a good job with the intros, man. I appreciate it. And I also do want to take the time to appreciate everything that you do, giving us this platform here and being a connector. So thank you for everything you do. So good morning, everyone. I'm Eric Watson. As Pete mentioned, I had the previous stint with sports. What I do now is I work in finance, where I get to work with families and businesses with like the investments, insurance, how to put that all together, and so they can achieve like their version of financial success. And like that has been helpful for me because of my sports background, because of being able to help somebody. Hey, I have this goal. This is where I want to get. Thankfully, my role with sports has been able to blend with that. So so a little bit about me, with my insights that I'll touch on is, as Pete mentioned, when I was younger, it was like, I know everybody remembers the career day. Somebody came in and a guy, he was super tall, came in athletic. He was like, played professional basketball. I really wish that I remembered who that actually was, so I could possibly reach out, but I have no clue who it was. But yeah, he came in, he had his basketball, and he was like, hey, this basketball has literally taken me all over the world. I've played here, there, met some of my best friends. He was telling us all about all these different experiences, like this lifestyle. And I was like, at a young age, I'm like, oh yeah, I want to do that. That's what I want to do. That's what I want to be. So he was like, now he did tell us it wasn't going to be easy. It is going to take a lot. So, but I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I like this. I love spending time with the family, going, watching these games and doing these different things. So the first thing that I wanted to touch on was like, having that goal. So for me, that was that goal. I knew I wanted to play a professional sport. At the time, I was football, basketball, baseball. I didn't know which route I was going to go, but I knew that's what I wanted to do. So first insight is like, yes, definitely have a goal and a clear vision of what it is that you want to do. Otherwise, you're just kind of out there, because I was able to put 2 and 2 together. Like, hey, there's a lot of kids out here, a lot of teammates. We all want this thing. What's going to make me different? And so, thank you. So what's going to make me different? And one of the things I started, getting more serious with it is learning that, hey, you have to have a serious routine. So I started, the more you play, you get closer with different coaches and different mentors, different friends that are older than you. And they're like, hey, if you're really serious about this thing, you have to have a very disciplined routine. And you have to know, like, what is it that you're willing to sacrifice and give up? Because again, look around, there's a lot of people chasing the same thing. So what's going to make you different? So for me, I'll never forget, I had a coach. He was like, listen, I never had an All-American or a top-tier player that was not serious about getting into the weight room. And they had a very meticulous routine of what it is they were going to do. So I was like, okay, I don't know what that looks like. Let me find my resources. I'm like, okay, so I started, fortunately enough, you go work out, you meet somebody, you would see these people with like these international shorts, and they're very distinctive. So I was like, let me swallow my pride. I was introverted. I didn't like talking to people who I didn't know. And I remember one day I was in the weight room. I was like, let me go ask this guy. And so, because he had the little fancy shorts on, I was like, going back to my goal. I know that's what I want to do. That's where I want to go. I know he plays professional. Let me just ask him. Maybe he says yes. Maybe he says no. It's one of the nicest guys ever. He was like, yeah, man, like, this is my routine. This is what I do. This is how I do it. And it's going to take a lot. And so I didn't like waking up, but it took me waking up 5 a.m. in the morning. Matter of fact, at the LA Fitness, that's kind of right down the street from here, is where we would work out. Mondays through Fridays, I would be there in the AM. It would be 2 hours in the gym lifting, and then another 2 hours in the gym with the basketball. So I'm like, okay. Had to get tight with the diet too. So the diet, so it was like, what am I willing to sacrifice as opposed to being a young kid out here running around, just doing whatever. I had to be very meticulous with that. Even my shooting routine, which was, I had to make like a certain amount of shots with keeping a certain amount of misses. And so doing that over time, I started to see the results. So thankfully, kind of skipping forward, like, yeah, college, I was able to play in college and have a very successful career. And I went to a small college, Maryville College in Tennessee. And when you go there, that's not typically somewhere where you go make that jump to go play international, because we're definitely not playing on TV and big screens like that. And so, yeah, it's just you're just not getting that same notoriety. So that kind of leads to my third point of like self-belief and determination, because they're asking you like, hey, what do you want to do after college? And the right answer is like, yeah, I want to go into business, or I want to do this. It's not, your typical answer is not going to be, yeah, I want to go play this professional sport. And so, but I wanted to be bold, and I wanted to say that. And of course, I said that in like one of the little meetings, and the teacher was like, I don't know if that really happens at places like this. And so, young kid, like, yes, that's going to hurt. It's not going to feel good. But I was like, you know what? That's my dream. And it's not like something I just came up with yesterday. And like, no disrespect to this lady, but lady, you don't know how hard I've been working and how bad I really want to go do this. So it is, you just stick to that routine that I knew was going to be my winning recipe, and just believing in myself. Like, hey, I know the work I put in. I know where it is that I'm trying to go. And I'm not going to let anybody's words just deter me from where it is that I'm going. So the thing is, like, whatever you're going to do in life, you just have to believe that you're going to do it, because if you don't believe it, why should somebody else? So needless to say, because I had this very specific targeted goal of playing and like trying to break that record, a scoring record there, I was like, I ended up accomplishing so many other things I didn't even know there were to accomplish in college. And fortunately enough, when it all came said and done, like, I was able to get the notoriety. The rest is history. Play overseas and accomplish that dream. It's been a blessing for me, but I had a great time playing. But one of my best gifts was, I would say, like the second chapter of my sports career was when I actually was done playing. I had a best friend of mine. He passed, he was military, passed young age, but before he had done so, he was telling me how he's like, Eric, you're going to do something great with the kids. And at that time, I had no intentions of coaching or doing anything with kids. And I was like, what are you talking about? I'm doing something with kids? Like, what do you mean? Surely enough, after he had passed, it was like somebody started, like, I moved back to my hometown, and ironically enough, I was going to start being in commercial insurance. And so, once people realized I was back, they was like, hey, I got this group of kids. Like, I know you said you're ready to be done with basketball, but will you help out these kids. I was like, listen, like I'm really trying to be done. I'll help out at like one practice. This one practice turned into multiple practices, working with a lot of kids, training a lot of kids, and I fell in love with it all over again. And so my new goal was to, again, having a goal and a vision. I was like, you know what? Like, I want to help these kids get to college because they told me, like, hey, I want to get to this next level, coach. We're not that good yet, but we want to do that. We want to play on college. So I was like, okay, hey, it's going to take a lot of work. So being able to help these kids with that vision of like, hey, y'all have this vision of wanting to go play. It's going to take a very disciplined routine. And like, I really get a lot of joy of pumping that self-confidence in them. And so now they're in a place now, they're now juniors in college. So I love getting a chance to watch them, stream them, play and everything else. So I help out around the community and doing that as well. But those are definitely my insights of, you know, having a goal. You got to have that routine and you got to have that self-belief. I'm able to carry that into my professional career now, even with clients, because we're working with people. It's like, hey, I'm trying to get here. I'm trying to achieve this version of my financial success. I get to help put the puzzles together. Like, hey, it's going to take discipline. You might need to cut back here, do this, that, and the other to help you get here, but we can do it. And you got to believe you can do it. So I'm enjoying life. It's been a couple different chapters for me, but yeah, that's kind of my background.
Stay for just a question.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Eric. That's so good. Now, I have one question. Well, I have a bunch, but I'm only going to ask one. So you make it to the professional ranks. You're in Brazil. You're in Romania. You can't speak the language. You know you have the ability. How did you handle that adversity from the standpoint, like, give our younger people a little idea of how you handled it personally, because there had to be challenges and setbacks, but what did you do that you've made it to the pros? You're in a foreign country, don't know anybody besides, you know, playing. How did you handle that?
Yeah, so good question. How did I handle change and going to a different country? Honestly, I would say the seeds were planted early. My mom did a good job of like, I had to go to these camps. And so only child, no siblings or whatnot. So one of her things is like, she wanted to push me outside my comfort zone. And so she would send me to these different sports camps where I had to get to know other kids. And like, hey, I'm not going to be here all the time now. She would, little did I know she was right around the corner if something happened, but I didn't know that. So because I was so engulfed with this dream that I wanted to do, and once I got over there, it didn't feel like, oh, hey, this is the first time I'm away from home. And I was like deeply in love with this sport. As long as I'm doing this, I'm good, you know? So, and then like the people were great. Thankfully, like with the manners and everything else. So it was great.
We're going to give a shout out to your mom because, man, that is good. I love that. Push you. You got to push them, because if you live in the comfort zone of life, there's no statues elected or put up. Hey, that person lived a comfortable life, never got out of their comfort zone. They don't do that. It's getting out of your comfort zone. Thank you so much, Eric. We appreciate you so much. All righty. Now we're going to fast forward. Kevin, I want to give a shout out to Kevin over there. Kevin Bora is in the back there in the control center. We're here at Grace Church Town Center. Now, if you're looking for a good church, this is the best. Now, I'm a little bit biased, but that's okay. I can talk about that. And if you want to come and meet Kevin, he'll be in the control center every Sunday morning, making sure things run smoothly. Technology is his right hand. Well, what do you say? He's good at it. Because I came this morning and I said, oh, can we do something remote? And he goes, you didn't tell me about that. So I said, yeah, I forgot to tell you. But he figures it out. He just goes and starts downloading stuff, starts putting things together. And that's life. So we don't always get everything handed to us in a silver platter. We got to figure it out. And Kevin figures it out. So are we close? I could forego my section if we want to go right to Mark Matthews. What do you think? Is that something we could do? Or do you want me to do my session while you set something up? Thoughts? Oh, dang, there's my coach. Holy mackerel. If this isn't cool, this guy, I got to give him an introduction. Okay, Mark, hold on while I frame the introduction. So I was being coached by a guy out of Dallas, Texas, a high performance coach. And he got to the end and he said, he asked me a couple questions. I don't know the exact question, but he said, I said, look, I'm a disciplined guy. I get up at 4:30 in the morning. I work hard. I said, I could get a 6 or 7 without you, but with you, I can get a 9 or 10. So I'd be crazy not to continue. And so I did. But then I met Mark. The day I met Mark was at my certification class, and I'm in role playing with this guy a couple times, 3 times, I think. My whole thing from the first time I met him is I got to get him as my coach. So I got home because he was good. He was real good. So anyway, I get home. I called the company. I said, hey, I want to switch coaches. Is that possible? They said, it's your money. Yes, it is. And then so I went to Mark and he goes, I'm full. I said, dang, come on. I get up at 4:30 in the morning. I'll do it anytime. And he goes, well, how about 7 o'clock on Monday morning? I said, done. I'm in. I'm good. And so I took it. It was the best thing I ever did because this guy's up in Columbus, Ohio. Have you finished your PhD yet?
I love this, Pete. It's great to see you. Can you guys hear me okay?
So Mark, he just challenges me. He kicks my butt. He just gets me moving. He actually, I'll tell this because this was a minor thing, but I've gone through some personal things. And so I had a little bit of anger. He goes, Pete, you're showing up with your girls as angry Pete. Do you think that's the right way to show up? I said, no. He said, well, try peaceful Pete. I went, dang, okay. So I did. I started showing up as peaceful Pete. And you imagine, they started liking peaceful Pete. And now I just got back from my vacation with my family. I mean, and that I'll give the credit where the credit's due. He shifted my mindset. He challenged me so many times, I could probably stand up here for 20 minutes, but I want to bring on Mark because he's made a big impact on my life, and I appreciate you, Mark, and thanks first for being remotely, and Kevin, thanks for figuring out because I didn't know when I came here how we were going to do it. So thank you, Mark. Please share a few thoughts with us today.
Fantastic, Pete. First things first, can you hear me? Wherever you are.
Yes. Yes.
Love this. I can't see you guys, but I can feel you guys. And I just want to just echo that, that work was the result of Pete really, truly committing to wanting to have a better life for himself and for seeing that he has a powerful mission and purpose on this planet. And I just got to be the beautiful witness and the guide to put the right things in front of him so that he could have those discoveries himself. Now, can you guys see the slide that goes along with what I'm sharing with you, or do you need me to share it on my screen?
Share it on your screen.
Perfect. Oh, can you enable that for me, Kevin?
Share the screen. Can you share your screen, Mark?
It's disabled for me right now. Can you click
disabled.
on that share and just make it so multiple people
Okay,
can?
he's got it right now. Okay. We're getting there, I think.
Let's go. We're going there, baby.
If we
It
don't,
is high
We
performance
will
time.
put something up there. Kevin is working on it as we speak, and
Good.
almost, I think, not yet. Okay, can you enable it now? Okay, not.
Kevin probably has to give permission on our Zoom.
Oh,
No.
it's Zoom.
It's no problem if you can't, because I want to get in here and give you the value. So just make sure, if you can, get them the slide if you can, just so they have something to take away.
I will send it to him. Yes.
Perfect. But I want to paint 3 things for you. My job today is to show you how you go from the potential you have to the creation you want to experience in this world. So for anybody who's in this room right now, as you step in here, I just want to let you know, I'm here. I'm a certified high performance coach. And I've been doing certified high performance coaching, not just as a coach, but as a client for over 12 rounds, which is a quarter of high performance coaching, because I just personally believe I have a purpose on this planet. I believe that I'm here to do really powerful things, that I'm here to contribute something to society, that I'm here to lift people like Pete, people like you in these rooms, because so many people have lifted me. I grew up with extremely challenging circumstances. I had lost both my parents by the age of 17. I had watched chaos completely divulge around me, and I watched all the people I love constantly in patterns that ultimately was destroying them and other people. And I learned some very powerful things throughout that journey, where now I'm about to finish a PhD in psychology. I get to serve so many people across the world as a certified high performance coach, and I get to do stuff like this. And what I really want to share with you is some key things that will allow you to take your life, no matter what you're going through or what struggle you have, which I honor, that you can take that struggle and you can do something powerful with it. Or you could take that beauty and you can amplify it even more. And so I want to give you an analogy to biology. In biology, we have DNA, right? And DNA is this beautiful potential that's encoded within our genes, within our body. It's in every species. And through that DNA, it sends messages that allows us to create something beautiful. It allows us to build our bodies. It allows us to build emotion. It allows us to build experience. And the powerful thing about that is that DNA needs to have something to send off into the world to make that creation happen. And so I want to give you a little analogy here, which is the RNA. And I want to unpack this for you. The first thing that must happen for somebody to really move the needle in their life, to really go from Pete, who's hard charging, business focused, he's going to get you results, which is great, to peaceful Pete at home with his family, where he's a beacon of light and love, is Pete had to shift his mindset. He had to become results focused. Now we're in the age of teaching you to praise the process, to focus on your process, right? To focus on your inputs. Am I doing the things that I said I would do? And that's amazing. You want to be process oriented. You want to praise yourself for what you can control. You want to reward that, but you have to be results focused. You have to have a crystal clear result in your mind that you want to make happen. Now, sometimes that result is just, I want to start a podcast, or I want to grow a podcast, or I want to become the best version of myself. Great. Now what you do is you focus on that. You look for any bit of imagery, insight, sounds, music that will allow you to taste what that result will feel like, because that's what's going to allow you to move towards it. And so what a coach does is we start by making sure you're crystal clear. Pete knew that he had to be peaceful Pete with his family. And so we'd go through a process. We'd talk about that. What does that look like? When your little granddaughter comes up to you, what does peaceful Pete do in response? Peaceful Pete doesn't go, it's hey, sweetie. Hey. And you can feel it. And that results focus is so important, because if you unpack your life, you'll see that most of the things you have, you had to be able to see them first. If you want to cook dinner, you got to know what it looks like. You got to be able to think about what that's going to look like and taste like. And so that extrapolates to whatever you're trying to do now. Now, the second thing that I want to make sure you have, I know we've got limited time. This could be an hour and a half. We'll do it in a couple minutes. But the second thing, the N of that RNA, is a noble goal. And this is a differentiator here. A noble goal means that whatever goals you're setting, whatever results you have, it's aligned with something that you think is good. I'm a certified high performance coach because I truly believe within every being of my soul that when I step into someone's life and have the privilege to walk with them and help them and show compassion and care for them, and then also challenge them into the best of who they are, that is such a sacred journey. This has existed across time. And it used to be that only the top people in the world got to do this. It used to be the emperor, like an Alexander the Great, had an Aristotle who would do this with him. And only the people who were really high up got that. Now everybody can have access to that in some form. And I think it's amazing. And so to me, that's a noble goal, because I believe that as we do that, as we step in to the highest version of ourselves, that allows us to radiate the highest level of our being. I believe that's the path to peace. I believe that's the path to prosperity. I believe that's the path to a life that is so much more beautiful than what I experienced when I was younger. And so you've got to be results focused. You've got to have a noble goal. And yeah, you can have success without it, but you'll ultimately feel lacking. So do the work of identifying what that is. Work with someone to really make sure you've got clear results. It's aligned with a broader, noble goal and purpose that matters to you. And then the most important thing, if you take nothing else away from this entire event that you've been a part of, is action now. We live in a world where there is so much opportunity to stay stuck in our head, to play with abstract ideas and just stay stuck there, to get excited about this is what I want to build, this is what I want to do, this is what I want to see happen. And then we get stuck there because the ideas are rewarding enough for us and we got to raise our standard. Action has to happen now. What Pete also did when he activated Peaceful Pete is he also initiated a whole host of actions that allowed him to get closer to his family. That gave him the opportunity to express and embody Peaceful Pete with his family that ultimately led to the results like now where he's going on these beautiful vacations with them, he's connecting with them, and he's becoming even more of that person. In business, I work with a lot of business owners. It's very important to be action-oriented because growth is in a dynamic process. The world is constantly moving. So you got to move with it. And when you have a clear result, you have noble goals, you have the confidence to take action. Even if you don't get the result that you wanted that time, the lesson is worth it to you. It's how you're going to grow. But you have to favor action. And so as you're sitting here today, I get the privilege of kind of rounding us out, I believe, is really think to yourself, what is the right action for you now? And I'm going to challenge you to step it up, make it courageous. For me, a lot of time that action is asking for more help or support, hiring on a coach or hiring on team, or going after my dream client. If I had a podcast right now, I'd be like, who's the dream guest of my life that I want to work with? And I would already architect a plan and I would start taking actions to get them now. I would already start thinking, who can I go after that I would love to have a conversation with? And so I really want to unpack that for you. If you do nothing else but shift to say, no, okay, every time I do something, what's the result? And you challenge yourself to be courageous, to focus on that result. Sometimes you won't hit it. That's why it's actually hard to do. But you got to reward yourself to realize most people, they're not results focused. They're just checking off tasks. Results focused. Expand that and make that goal noble. Make it whatever is good to you. Whatever is you want to see in the world, make that your noble goal. And then take action. If you have an opportunity, I think Pete mentioned, I think he has some spots for people to work with him. And I think he's going to offer a strategy session. I think he even offers it for free. If he's doing that, take that. Because you can go through the high performance process and you can actually unlock greater levels of all of this and really spend the time to do that. So take whatever's right in front of you, run with that, especially if it's free. My gosh, why would you not? Run with that now. And then from there, challenge yourself, get one action. If you do a strategy session or you met somebody here today or you heard somebody speak here today and you want to go further with them or talk to them more or just have a lunch or a chat, whatever it is, just challenge yourself to make that action happen, get it scheduled. And then from there, pick another one. Always walk out of every room with an action that you could say that I'm going to do today. As a reminder, it's results focused, noble goals, action now. And I just want to thank you for the pleasure to step in here. I can't see you, but I just want you to know I can feel you. And I'm sending love, light, and faith and energy. Let's freaking go, Pete. I'm sending it back to you, baby.
Thank you, Mark. We appreciate you all the way from Columbus, Ohio. So that's a beautiful thing. Thank you, Mark. I don't know. Can you hear me? Put one finger up if you can hear me. Oh, okay, good. So thank you, Mark. He has made a big impact. And I think discipline's not is my thing. But like I said at the beginning, you can get into the red zone of a football game, but the celebration is in the end zone. And coaching gets you from the red zone to the end zone. And that's where we celebrate. That's where we have fun. That's where I love it when you said the results, because I've never been goals result oriented until recently. And I'd always set a goal, and then a year later I'd stumble on it and go, oh, that was a goal. And never looked at it for a year. I mean, if you don't look at something on a regular basis, how are you going to get it? If you're not geared towards results, how are you going to measure your progress? So Mark, thank you so much for taking the time. He had a coaching session from 10 to 11. So we put him to come after his coaching session, and we appreciate you. Appreciate you, the impact you're making around the world and up there in Columbus, Ohio. And one day we're going to get you down to Atlanta at our event. So thank you. Thank you, Mark. Okay, so I want you just to picture the seats full, because we want to develop a community that encourages, that challenges, that allows you to grow and allows other people to experience that. Because we're going to be moving into probably the craziest times of our lifetime. Now, Eric hasn't been around as much as all of us read, but it's going to change, and it's going to change rapidly. And you want to be gearing towards change. You don't want to be the person that goes wondering what happened. You want to be the person that recognizes the change, and to create your image, your personality, your brand around your name and what you're doing and the impact you're making. It takes regular effort. Podcasting puts the digital content out there. You got to be able to, when people are going to run into you, they're going to Google you. And if they only see your LinkedIn profile, that's not going to represent you the way you can be represented. But you can be represented through your podcast that you do, through the online course that you offer, through the content that you put out there in your digital footprint. So the next event, if you go to petecain.me/live, that's where Eventbrite is. If you register, the next one's coming up in a month. And if Kevin and I, I'm working with his agent, and he's working with my attorneys. We're trying to get him on a long-term contract, because we're trying to make sure IT and AV come together, that it's as smooth as can be. And he always does. To bring Mark in here at the last minute, I mean, I literally 20 minutes before said, hey, can we do remote? And it's like, he made it happen. And thank you, Kevin. We appreciate you. We appreciate all you do on Sunday morning too. I know Lindsay and I get to see it firsthand, so we know what we got. So thank you so much. But do bring a friend next time. Bring a friend, because we want to speak from the platform. We're going to chunk it, or what do you call it? We're going to make it into mini videos. We're going to make it into content that we can put out there for you, because organizations like Jerry and I are part of, Rotary, they're always looking for good speakers. And so the more you speak, the better you get, the more opportunities that open up for you out there. So thank you so much for being here. I try to end on time, and let me see. Well, almost. Okay, it's 11:30. So thank you so much. I appreciate you being here on a Saturday morning. Okay, bring the popcorn. We got to get rid of the ants out there. Don't take any of those cookies on the way out, because if you do, you're going to be taking the ants with you. They found the cookies. We have an event on Sunday, and they brought the cookies for it. Yeah, I think ants will find stuff. There's a big line all the way to the parking lot of ants. I mean, these ants, they love, it's a whole plate of cookies. They're going like, they're telling all their friends like, hey, we found 60 cookies. You come with us. And they all did come.
there since like at least Wednesday.
Well, you know, I got him. Okay. I looked, I moved some stuff around. So,
That's so exciting.
and I followed the line. That line goes all the way out the front door. Awesome. Next to the bank. And you making an impact on our kids. We need. You make the kids, I guess girls, but
Hey, you had this scheduled for 11 o'clock.
10.
I have 11 also.
Really?
That's why I got here when I did. I have
You
it
know what?
on my
You
calendar.
really, you just
I